The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. Inside the Great Hall, beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that adjusted to each species' unique anatomy. Some had scales that shimmered, like oil, others had tentacles that moved like water, and a few looked almost human except for their strange-colored skin and extra eyes. Ambassador Veltar stood at the center podium, his tall blue frame casting shadows on the polished floor. His people, the hegemony, controlled 3 star systems and considered themselves the most advanced race in this sector of space. Today was the quarterly meeting where the Galactic Council decided which worlds to contact next, which to trade with, and which to simply ignore. Next item, Veltar announced, his voice echoing through translation devices that turned his words into hundreds of different languages. Sector 7 Alpha, the 3rd planet orbiting a yellow star. The locals call it Earth. A hologram appeared above the podium showing a blue and green world covered in swirling white clouds. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful, but the assembled delegates barely glanced at it. Status report? Asked Council Elder Zix Mora, a insect-like being whose species had mastered space travel when most worlds were still covered in ice. 47 standard years of first contact attempts, Veltar read from his datapad. Multiple radio transmissions sent, deep space probes deployed near their system, cultural exchange packages delivered to their outer planets. 0 response to any communication. Attempts. A sound like buzzing filled the hall as several species began what could only be described as laughter, though it came out as clicks, hums, and musical notes depending on who was making it. 47 years? Wheezed Ambassador Korthal, whose people resembled walking trees with too many branches. And they still haven't figured out how to respond to a simple hello? Maybe they're still trying to invent the wheel, added another delegate, causing more laughter to ripple through the assembly. Elder Zix Mora clicked her mandibles together in amusement. Or perhaps they're too busy discovering fire to notice the galaxy around them. The laughter grew louder. Even the normally serious representatives from the Trade Federation were making their species' version of chuckling sounds. Far away from Nexus Prime, hidden deep within the icy surface of Saturn's moon Titan, Director Kim Minho watched the Council session through feeds from surveillance devices that had been secretly placed throughout the alien station years ago. The monitoring room around him was filled with the quiet hum of advanced computers and the soft voices of technicians recording every word spoken in the council chambers. Still calling us primitives, muttered Captain Park Ji-won from her position at a nearby console. Her fingers moved across holographic controls that would have impressed even the most advanced council species if they had known such technology existed on Earth. Good, Minho replied quietly, his eyes never leaving the main display. Let them keep thinking that. Back in the council chambers, Veltar continued his report. Preliminary scans show the planet has achieved basic nuclear technology and simple spaceflight capabilities. They've managed to place small satellites around their world and have sent primitive probes to nearby planets. Nothing that suggests they're ready for galactic contact. Probably still fighting wars with chemical explosives, suggested another delegate, earning more laughter. The question before us, Veltar said, raising his voice to quiet the assembly, is whether we should continue wasting resources on first contact protocols with such an obviously backward species, or simply classify them as a non-interference zone and move on to more promising candidates. The debate that followed was brief and one-sided. Delegate after delegate stood to express their opinion that Earth was clearly not worth their time or attention. The humans were too primitive, too slow to develop, too isolated to be of any use to galactic civilization. I move that we classify Earth as a protected primitive world, announced Elder Zix Mora. Let them develop naturally for another few thousand years. Maybe by then they'll have figured out how to build a proper radio. The vote was unanimous. Every single member of the council agreed that Earth should be left alone, not because they respected human independence, but because they saw humans as barely intelligent animals who weren't worth the effort of contact. As the session moved on to other business, none of the council members noticed the tiny devices that had been recording their every word, their every gesture, their every dismissive laugh. They had no idea that their primitive humans had not only been listening to their communications for decades, but had been studying their technology, learning their languages, and mapping their territories. In the hidden base on Titan, Director Minho finally allowed himself a small smile as he watched the council delegates discuss other matters. They had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, and they didn't even know it. "How long until the fleet is ready?" he asked Captain Park. She checked her displays. 6 months for full deployment. The solar defense grid is already operational. "Then we wait," Minho said. "And we prepare to show them exactly what Earth silence really means." The elevator descended through solid rock for nearly 10 minutes before the doors finally opened. With a soft hiss, Director Lee Hanna stepped out into a corridor that looked like something from a science fiction movie, except this was real and hidden 3 kilometers beneath the Taebaek Mountains in South Korea. The walls glowed with a soft, blue light that came from technology no human had invented. Instead, it had been carefully copied from alien devices that Earth's secret agents had been acquiring for the past 30 years. Every panel, every display, every piece of equipment in this facility was built using knowledge stolen from the very species that considered humans too primitive to notice. Hanna walked quickly through the main corridor, her footsteps echoing softly on the metal floor. She passed dozens of rooms filled with technicians working at stations that monitored alien communications across the galaxy. In one room, linguists studied recordings of council meetings, building detailed profiles of each species' psychology and culture. In another, engineers worked on reverse engineering captured alien weapons and shield technology. The war room stood at the heart of the facility, its massive central display showing a 3-dimensional map of known space that would have amazed even the most advanced council scientists. Red dots marked alien military bases, blue lines showed trade routes, and yellow symbols indicated diplomatic meeting points. This was intelligence gathered through 50 years of careful observation and infiltration. "Director," called Chief Analyst Choi Sungmin as Hanna entered the room. He stood beside a display showing the recent movements of several alien fleets. "We've detected unusual activity in the Zephyrian sector. Their patrol patterns have changed and they've been moving ships toward the outer rim territories." Hanna studied the display with practiced eyes. The Zephyrians were one of the more aggressive council species, known for their quick tempers and faster weapons. "Show me the details." The display zoomed in on a section of space where dozens of alien ships had been gathering over the past few weeks. Each vessel was clearly marked with its class, armament, and crew capacity. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain, yet here it was, collected through a network of stealth probes and infiltration devices that the aliens still didn't know existed. "They're positioning for something big," observed Admiral Kang Min-seok as he joined them at the display. Despite being in his 60s, the admiral moved with the confidence of someone who had spent decades preparing for a war that most of humanity didn't even know was coming. "The question is, whether they're planning to attack us or someone else." "Does it matter?" asked Engineer Yoon Ji-ho from his position at a nearby console. His screen showed the status of Earth's hidden defenses, weapons platforms disguised as asteroids and space debris scattered throughout the solar system. "If they're moving in our direction, we need to be ready." Hanna nodded and touched a control panel that brought up a new display. This one showed the solar defense grid, a network of hidden military installations that had been built in secret over the past 20 years. Weapon platforms disguised as mining stations in the asteroid belt, stealth ships hidden in the shadows of Jupiter's moons, orbital defense satellites masked to look like space junk. "Status report on our forces," she ordered. "All stealth platforms are operational and undetected," reported Yoon. "The jump-capable vessels are ready for immediate deployment. We have 47 ships equipped with hybrid drive systems, each one capable of matching or exceeding Council technology standards." The numbers were impressive, but Hanna knew they represented something far more important than military hardware. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology had been built using knowledge carefully extracted from the very aliens who considered humans too stupid to be dangerous. "What about our infiltration assets?" she asked. Still in place and undetected, answered Sungmin. Our people have been living and working on Council worlds for over a decade. They've provided most of our technical intelligence and continue to monitor political developments. It was an incredible achievement that few people on Earth even knew about. While the Galactic Council laughed at human silence, human agents had been walking among them, learning their languages, studying their culture, and slowly gathering the information that would eventually turn Earth from prey into predator. The aliens made one critical mistake, Admiral Kang said as he studied the tactical displays. They assumed that silence meant ignorance. They never considered that we might be watching them just as carefully as they thought they were watching us. Hana smiled coldly as she looked at the comprehensive intelligence network they had built. The Council species communicated freely among themselves, never imagining that primitive humans might be listening to every conversation, recording every meeting, and analyzing every piece of information they shared. They think we're still throwing rocks at each other, she said. Meanwhile, we've been building the most advanced fleet in known space using their own technology against them. The irony was perfect. The Galactic Council had dismissed Earth as too primitive to matter, but that dismissal had given humanity the greatest advantage possible, time and secrecy to prepare for the inevitable conflict. How long before we're ready for full operations? Hana asked. 6 months for complete deployment, Admiral Kang replied. Though if they force our hand earlier, we can be ready in weeks. Hana nodded and looked once more at the displays showing alien fleet movements. Soon, the galaxy would learn what Earth's silence had really meant. The space around Jupiter shimmered as dozens of massive alien ships dropped out of hyperspace, their dark hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. The Zephyrian Armada had arrived in the Sol system with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could fight back. Admiral Kethmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominance, watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his main screen. His reptilian features showed no emotion, but inside he felt the satisfaction of another easy conquest. The Council had finally decided that this primitive world might have some useful resources after all, and they had sent him to collect them. All ships report ready status, announced his communications officer, her scaled hands moving across alien controls that pulsed with strange light. The human world appears defenseless, basic orbital satellites and primitive space stations only. Excellent, Kethmore hissed, his forked tongue flicking out briefly. Begin standard conquest protocols. Send the surrender demand, then prepare to disable their communications. That was when everything went wrong. The first sign of trouble was when their communications array simply stopped working. Not damaged, not jammed, just completely dead, as if someone had reached inside their systems and turned off the power. Then their targeting computers began displaying error messages in a language that looked almost familiar, but couldn't possibly exist. "Sir," called the tactical officer, his voice rising with panic. "We're losing system control across the entire fleet. Something is interfering with our networks." Hidden in the shadow of Europa, one of Jupiter's largest moons, Lieutenant Commander Bei Sujin watched the alien fleet struggle with systems that were turning against them. Her ship, the Silent Storm, was practically invisible to alien sensors, built using stealth technology that combined human engineering with stolen Council designs. "All stealth units, this is Storm Leader," she spoke quietly into her headset. "Target assignments are confirmed. Begin Phase 1. Around the solar system, 46 other human ships powered up weapons that had never been seen before in galactic space. Each vessel was a hybrid of human innovation and alien technology, created by engineers who had spent decades studying captured Council equipment. Back on the Stellar Dominance, Admiral Kethmore watched his tactical display with growing horror as ship after ship reported critical system failures. His advanced dreadnoughts, the pride of the Zephyrian military, were being systematically blinded and confused by electronic attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These humans barely understand basic spaceflight." "Sir, we're detecting multiple contacts," the sensor officer reported, her voice shaking. "Ships are appearing throughout the system. They're using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." The human ships materialized like ghosts, their sleek forms nothing like the crude vessels the Council had expected to find. Instead of primitive rockets and basic metal hulls, these ships moved with the fluid grace of advanced technology, their surfaces seeming to bend light around them. Commander Shin Do-young guided his destroyer Mountain Wind into attack position behind a cluster of Zephyrian cruisers. His crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers, even though most of the galaxy still thought humans were barely capable of reaching their own moon. "Weapons locked," reported his tactical officer, Captain Park Ji-won. "Target their primary power systems. Fire," Do-young ordered. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Council's databases. They combined particle beam technology stolen from the hegemony with kinetic projectiles designed by human physicists, creating devastating attacks that the alien shields couldn't properly defend against. The first Zephyrian cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its hull splitting apart as internal systems overloaded. The second and third ships tried to maneuver away, but their navigation systems were still being disrupted by the human cyber attacks. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Kethmore as he watched his fleet being destroyed by enemies that weren't supposed to exist. "The humans are primitives. They don't have this technology." His flagship shuddered as multiple human ships focused their fire on it. The stellar dominance had been built to intimidate and destroy lesser species, but its designers had never imagined facing weapons that had been specifically created to counter Council technology. On the bridge of the Silent Storm, Commander Bay watched the alien admiral's ship listing badly, atmosphere streaming from multiple hull breaches. Her tactical display showed that the entire Zephyrian fleet was either destroyed or disabled, accomplished in less than an hour by ships the galaxy didn't know existed. "Storm leader to all units," she announced. "Primary objectives complete. Begin prisoner recovery operations." The few surviving Zephyrian ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels that moved with impossible coordination. Their crews were taken aboard human ships by boarding parties wearing armor that incorporated the best features of several Council technologies. Admiral Kethmore was brought to the bridge of the Silent Storm in restraints that adjusted automatically to his alien physiology. He stared at Commander Bay with a mixture of fear and confusion, unable to understand how his technologically superior fleet had been so completely defeated. "You were supposed to be primitive," he said in heavily accented English, a language he had learned from intercepted human broadcasts. Bay smiled coldly. "We were, 50 years ago, but we've been learning from you ever since." As the human ships began the process of salvaging alien technology and securing prisoners, emergency transmissions flooded back toward Council space carrying a message that would change everything. Earth was not what anyone had thought. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across their territory. Elder Zixmora's usually composed insect features twisted with panic as she read the latest transmission from the Outer Rim sectors. 12 fleets destroyed in the past week, she announced to the assembled delegates, her voice shaking through the translation devices. "Human ships appearing in systems we thought were completely secure. They're moving faster than our intelligence networks can track them." Ambassador Veltar paced back and forth at the center podium, his blue skin now pale with fear. "This is impossible. The humans were silent for 50 years. They couldn't even respond to basic communications. How do they suddenly have technology that surpasses our own?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A holographic display flickered to life above the assembly, showing the face of a human woman with short black hair and calm dark eyes. The delegates gasped as they realized their most secure facility had been infiltrated. "Honored Council members," said Captain Oh Hyunwoo, though she was speaking from somewhere deep within Nexus Prime itself. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm here to collect something you took from us many years ago." The security alerts began blaring throughout the station as armed human soldiers moved through corridors that were supposed to be impenetrable. They wore armor that seemed to shift and change color, making them nearly invisible against the crystal walls. Their weapons fired energy beams that cut through alien materials like they were made of paper. Tech specialist Nam Yoonji worked quickly at a computer terminal in the Council's most secure data vault, her fingers flying across interfaces designed for beings with entirely different anatomies. The alien computer systems might as well have been built by children compared to the hybrid technology her equipment represented. Package secured, she reported into her headset as terabytes of classified council information flowed into her portable storage devices. Their military plans, political structures, economic data, everything. The information she was stealing represented centuries of galactic civilization, but more importantly, it contained detailed records of every species the Council had conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. Evidence of crimes that had been hidden from the galaxy for generations. Meanwhile, in space around Nexus Prime, Commander Shin Do-young's fleet had surrounded the massive station without anyone noticing until it was too late. His ships had approached, using flight paths that took advantage of blind spots in the alien sensor networks. Knowledge gained from decades of careful observation. All Council vessels in the area have been disabled, reported his tactical officer. No casualties, but their ships are completely powerless. The human strategy was becoming clear. They weren't just attacking randomly, they were systematically dismantling the power structure that had dismissed them as primitives. Every assault was perfectly coordinated, striking at the exact moment when it would cause maximum disruption with minimum loss of life. Back in the council chambers, panic had given way to desperate anger as the delegates realized the scope of what was happening to them. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were hunting down every council asset across multiple star systems. They must have been planning this for decades, whispered Ambassador Korthal, his tree-like branches shaking with fear. While we thought they were primitive, they were studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing to strike. Elder Zixamora tried to maintain some dignity as reports continued to arrive of human victories across the galaxy. We can negotiate, she announced. Surely they want something we can provide. Territory, resources, technology sharing agreements, her words were interrupted by another holographic display, this one showing a human male in a military uniform, standing on the bridge of a ship that incorporated design elements from dozens of different council species. Council members, said Commander Park Jinwoo, his voice calm and professional, you had 50 years to try negotiation. Instead, you chose to laugh at us. Now you get to experience what it feels like to be dismissed as irrelevant. The psychological impact was devastating. These were species that had conquered hundreds of worlds, that saw themselves as the natural rulers of the galaxy. Now they were being systematically defeated by the very beings they had considered too primitive to notice. The worst part was how easily the humans seemed to accomplish it. Their ships moved with a coordination that suggested they had been practicing these maneuvers for years. Their technology combined the best features of every council species, improved with innovations that alien scientists couldn't understand. Sir, called a hegemony officer to Ambassador Veltar, we're receiving surrender requests from our forward bases in 7 different sectors. The humans are offering terms, but only for complete withdrawal from their space. Veltar's pride warred with his survival instincts. The hegemony had never retreated from anyone, but they had also never faced an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. The final blow came when the lights in the council chambers dimmed and Captain Oh Hyunwoo walked into the room through the main entrance, having somehow bypassed every security system in the station. She carried a datapad that contained everything the council had tried to keep secret. Your expansion plans included enslaving 47 different worlds, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. Those species deserve to know what you were planning for them. As she spoke, human ships throughout the galaxy were already broadcasting the stolen council documents to every inhabited world they could reach. The evidence of planned conquests, resource theft, and cultural destruction spread across communication networks faster than the council could stop it. The age of easy conquest was over. The hunters had become the hunted. 6 months after the first human ship had revealed itself to the galaxy, Ambassador Lim Seoho walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. The station looked much the same as it had during the Council's rule, but everything had changed in ways that weren't immediately visible. The crystal walls still glowed with their soft alien light, But now human technicians worked alongside beings from dozens of different species, all of them focused on rebuilding rather than conquering. Where once the hallways had echoed with the arrogant voices of council members planning their next expansion, now they carried the sounds of genuine cooperation. Sioho entered the great assembly hall, where the old Galactic Council had once made their decisions. The floating chairs were still there, still adjusting to accommodate different alien anatomies, but the beings sitting in them now represented a very different kind of government. Elder Zixmora was still present, but her role had changed dramatically. Instead of commanding from a position of assumed superiority, she now served as an advisor, her centuries of experience valued, but no longer considered automatically correct. The humility in her posture would have been unthinkable just months earlier. The reconstruction of the Altarian system is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported to the assembly. Her people, the same species that had once dismissed humans as primitive, were now working under human supervision to repair damage they had caused during their conquest campaigns. Vice Admiral Jung Hyun stood at the back of the chamber, her presence a quiet reminder of the military force that had made this transformation possible. Her uniform bore insignia that combined human designs with symbols from allied species, representing the new coalition that had replaced the old council's rule. Through the great windows of the assembly hall, her fleet maintained its position around Nexus Prime. The ships were a mixture of human vessels and captured council technology that had been repurposed for defense rather than conquest. The message was clear without being threatening. The old ways were finished forever. Ambassador Seoho called out Representative Korthal, the tree-like being whose species had once been among the most aggressive supporters of expansion. The Rimward territories are requesting protection status. They're concerned about pirates moving into the power vacuum left by our military withdrawals. Seoho nodded and made notes on his datapad. This was exactly the kind of situation the new system had been designed to handle. Instead of conquest and exploitation, humanity offered protection and partnership to species that had been overlooked or threatened by the old council. Approved, he said. Deploy the 3rd Defense Fleet to establish patrol routes in that sector. Make sure the local governments understand that we're there to protect, not to control. The difference was more than just words. Human military doctrine had been built around the idea of defensive strength rather than aggressive expansion. They had learned from watching the Council's mistakes, seeing how conquest ultimately weakened the conqueror by creating endless rebellions and resistance movements. Dr. Kim Soo-young, Earth's chief xenologist, stood to present her latest report. We've completed cultural assessments on 37 species that were previously classified as primitive by Council standards. Most of them have valuable knowledge and technologies that were simply ignored because they didn't fit Council expectations. This was perhaps the most important change of all. Where the old Council had divided the galaxy into advanced and primitive species, the human-led coalition recognized that every civilization had something valuable to contribute. Technology wasn't the only measure of advancement. The Verdani plant shapers have developed agricultural techniques that could feed billions, Dr. Kim continued. The crystalline beings of Nexus 7 have mathematical insights that our best computers are still trying to understand. The Council dismissed them all as irrelevant. Ambassador Veltar, the same being who had once laughed at Earth's silence, now served as coordinator for reparations programs. His blue features showed none of their former arrogance as he reported on efforts to repair the damage caused by decades of Council policies. 17 worlds have requested assistance in rebuilding their cultural heritage sites, he said quietly. The Council's cultural suppression programs destroyed irreplaceable historical artifacts across multiple systems. We're working with local populations to restore what we can. The psychological transformation was as important as the political one. Species that had been taught to see themselves as inferior were rediscovering their own value, while former Council members were learning what it meant to serve rather than rule. Seoho stood to address the assembly, his words carrying the weight of humanity's new position in galactic affairs. The old Council believed that might made right, that technological advancement gave them the authority to decide the fate of other species. They were wrong. He gestured toward the windows where human ships maintained their protective formation around the station. Earth's strength comes not from our weapons or our technology, but from our patience and our willingness to listen. We spent 50 years learning about you while you assumed we were too primitive to matter. The silence in the chamber was profound. These were beings who had once commanded starfleets and ruled entire sectors of the galaxy, now listening respectfully to representatives of a world they had dismissed as insignificant. The galaxy will know peace, Seoho continued, but it will be a peace built on cooperation rather than conquest, on protection rather than exploitation. Those who can accept this new reality will find themselves welcomed as partners. Those who cannot will find themselves left behind. As the session concluded, the transformation was complete. The age of galactic empires ruling through fear was over. The age of humanity's quiet strength had begun.